All right. Just in the interest of time, we can dive right in. If you all want to just open up your presentation, I think you should be able to share your screen, and we'll give you an undivided 15 to just give your presentation slash pitch, and then we'll ask a couple questions at the end and just wrap things up. So the stage is yours.
Okay, well, good morning, judges. My name is Miriam Aguado-Staggs, along with my partners, Dominique Lapierre and Jennifer Gallant. We created PawPals, and PawPals is a platform that gives the opportunity to dog owners to ensure successful outings with their best friends. And hold on one sec. Okay, there you go. So the problem that we wanted to solve is how might we connect dog owners to their compatible pets together for them to hang out at local venues, doggy-friendly venues or parks for week. During that week, we wore different hats. We had different roles. Jennifer Gallant was more like the UX researcher. She was in charge of testing and all the research. Dominic was more like the UX designer. He did all the wireframes and he was in charge of the experience of the flows. And I was more like the UI designer. I was in charge of the visual design and the branding. And throughout the project, we developed different deliverables, which were part of the guidelines. We use different tools like Maze, Figma, Usability Hub, and different tools for communication like Trello, Slack, and Google Meet in order to create the project. I know this is the first time you are doing a hackathon here at Thinkful. So we wanted for you to have an idea of how our sprint went. And on the first day, it was very much just coming up with an idea of the problem that we wanted to solve. And then throughout the next few days during the week, we did the design process really quick. Some days we were designing something in the morning and kind of testing at night. And my partners are on the East Coast and I'm on the West Coast. So actually that was an advantage because my partners were doing research and designing during their daytime, and at night or their night, I would come up and kind of see what they created and kind of like look at the research and kind of create from there. So it was a good partnership that way. At the end of the week, we had very clear ideas of where we would like to take the project in the future. This is just a first iteration of a very basic MVP, but I think we know what we do next in a future iteration and where we could market our project with like more features that we would like to add maybe in the future. And Jen?
Now comes the fun stuff, the research, right? So to kick all of this off, we started with a survey because we need to know who our users were. We found that the majority of the 41 respondents surveyed walk their dog daily. Bingo. We already have something that we know can be incorporated on a day-to-day basis. The next piece that we learned was that 51% of the users live in a suburban area, and our users comprised of mostly females aged 26 to 40 with an income of up to $60,000. That's information that can be a great place to start for our client, the entrepreneur, when it comes to marketing. Investing in something like this has very low overhead costs, but there's so much opportunity to scale it, which we're going to explore in the user stories coming up. Next slide. Let's bring our users to life here. So our user personas are developed based on the insights that we gathered from the survey. We also followed up the survey with some user interviews. And so this is also what helped to flush out who our users were, what their motivations and pain points were. So this is our artistic Willow. She gets busy in spurts because she's an Etsy shop owner. So she wants to make her quality time with Lula count. Our next persona is David, And David is a little bit more of our analytical guy. He's actually a little bit extrovert and loves getting out on the weekends, going hiking. But he's actually new to this area and is not familiar with what's around. He works from home a couple of days a week, and he wants to make sure that he's getting some outdoor time during the day, both for him and his dog. So we've introduced our users as well as some of their pain points. What we want to know now is, what value can PawPals bring, right? What can we do differently from our competitors? So we've got a couple of competitors identified here, and our opportunity lies in what they're not necessarily taking advantage of. So we spoke about knowing where local dog-friendly venues exist. One of the things identified in the survey was that when users were taking their dogs for the walk, it wasn't just a straight out walk and come back home. Sometimes they visited friends, sometimes they went to other places. Excellent opportunity to interweave some things like dog-related businesses such as groomers, vets, trainers, etc. Future iteration, that's not something that we identified as being the highest priority for that MVP. All right, next slide. This is highlighting what we did identify as high priority for the MVP. So as a new user, we wanted to be able to create a profile for your dog or dogs. A returning user can be able to edit it. Our users needed a way to not just find, but also connect with who they've identified as a compatible playmate for their buddy. And then finally, having that piece of, okay, we know who we're going to connect with. We know that our dogs are potentially compatible. Where do we go? And that's solved by that final user story you're seeing there, by being given access to some local friendly parks. Now, something that's going to come down in the future iteration is the sharing of reviews of different parks, because that's going to create some great feedback for the users. Next slide.
So the user experience was a really exciting project to tackle. From the beginning, we were pulling ideas and inspirations from what competitive analysis we could. We wanted to start off with a map to make it both interactive as well as localized, bring the product home. An issue we ran into after that is it turned into a lot of bland text, boxes on boxes, and just kind of lacked any sort of dimension. So this was the first iteration, and then we moved on to the second iteration. Excellent. So this, a lot less noisy. Again, we have the map on the first screen. We show who in the area is using the app, making it more popular. And from the beginning, you're involved in what's going on. The next screen after that, the middle one, we have our dog friends, messaging options, seeing who you already know. There was still some tweaking we had to do after this, clean it up a little bit, but this is where we were going in that direction. And on the last screen, you'll see a notification for a new friend. What we wanted to do with this is we want to add a little dimension to the product by adding some layers to it. We didn't stick with the new friend notification, but we kept that concept, which you will see later in the mockup.
And now we go to the brand identity. So taking into account all the research that Jen did, we created those personas, and we built around those personas in mind. And also we wanted to build a brand that turn around dogs themselves and their relationships with their owners. So during the survey, we discovered that some of the owners, they don't refer themselves as dog owners, but as dog parents. And I thought that that was very endearing, and that was something that is very common. It was a shared experience. So we wanted to add some sort of an endearment to the brand. So for the name, PawPals, we really like the alliteration of the two words. We thought that was endearing, and also PawPals was a name that doesn't have direct competitors in the market currently, and that reflected exactly what the app is meant to do. You're supposed to make connections. So for the logo creation, again, we wanted to do something endearing, something playful. We chose Cooper Black, which is a very playful font. It has a little bit of an anthropologic kind of characteristic, like some letters look like animals almost. So I thought it was very playful. And we tested the 3 different kind of logos with, we did a preference test with some users, and they chose the one in the middle because they thought it was more legible. And it also reflected that connection between other doggy friends. For the brand colors, well, it was interesting. We learned that contrary to the common belief, dogs cannot see only gray, black, and white. That's what I thought, but no. Dogs can see gray, black, and white, but also shades of yellow and blue. And I thought that was so interesting. So the problem with yellow, as you probably know, is that it's a very difficult color in terms of accessibility. So we went to the color wheel, and we thought, well, the next color could be orange. And orange and blue, it's also like a really nice complementary color palette. So we took those colors also because they transmit this feeling of energy and fun. And we decided to go with those 2 for the CTAs and for the typography and the icons. And once we had the brand identity very clear, we created a style guide, and we used that style guide to apply it with the wireframes that Dom had previously worked on to create the mock-ups. And once we had the mock-ups, we kind of saw how everything came together, what was the feel of the app, and we made changes accordingly, like just to make everything very accessible and legible. And then we went, oh yeah, this is Jen.
Yes. So this is very, very cool. And I think there's probably a reason why I was drawn to the UX researcher role for this project. We use Maze for some unmoderated testing. It was one of the barriers that we came across was it was difficult to gather users to test. We did pull some from this survey that said they wanted further participation. But what you're looking at here is 67% misclick rate from when our first hi-fi prototype went out for testing, because the users really were trying to use the call to actions that we had on there to complete the mission. And that gave us some feedback immediately. We were like, we got to go back to the drawing board with this one. And so what you see on the right is how we were able to correct for it. And once you go through the prototype, you're going to see how it flows much better. With more time, we would test this again. I love that user research is interwoven throughout everything, because we're designing it for the users, so it needs to make sense to them.
So we see here coming up on the final product is something I think the whole team is exceptionally proud of. The big thing was refinement. There was so many options to go in so many different directions with this. And what we ended up, the culmination of all of it was executed, I think, perfectly. The creative color displays, meticulously put on there, and then this is 100% a product designed by the user research. So we're going to walk you through a couple of user stories now. Keeping it simple, home screen. We have, we're looking for a friend that we had met previously, Corey Love. We know they're in the area. They played earlier. And so we take a search of the dogs in the close by, and we decide that we want to connect with them for future play dates. We have that dynamic screen we looked at earlier, and we're going to send them a message once the friend request has been initiated. And we got something set up for Noodle and all CL later on today. Now we have our interactive dynamic map on the home screen. We want to see friends, we want to see dogs in the area, and we're looking for our friend Steve Buscemi. We heard they're at the dog park. Of course, Steve Buscemi needs his toys. And then we loop it back home. So as you can see, there's many options for where we can veer off and add more pathways on future iterations.
I had so much fun doing this project. Working on a team of designers really opened up my eyes to how important diversity is on any project that you do, because we all brought such different experiences into this. And while we each had our role, anytime we came together, we still had ideas flowing. Miriam and her research with the logos, or Dom and his experience with some UIs and just some ideas as they flowed. My absolute favorite. We definitely designed with emotion in mind, which was a lot of fun to do. And just one of the takeaways that we love to keep in mind is the fun that we had in creating this is the fun that we want our users to have as they use this on a day-to-day basis.
Okay. And for me, this was the first time I actually worked within a team. So that was the biggest takeaway from me, that this experience has been tremendously valuable, because working with other people, it allowed me to see how other people saw my design more immediately. You know, you design by yourself all this time throughout the program, and then suddenly you're paired with other two people and you have immediate feedback. That was really good for me. And also something that I learned throughout the project was that having clear deadlines and just keeping communication every day, I think it really helped us to have a successful project. We had a stand-up a meeting every day at 12. We would meet and communicate. We would also be on Slack all day long. So that, I think it really helped us to like have everything come together beautifully.
Yeah, there was a lot to take away from this experience. Obviously, so many tools and tactics that both Miriam and Jen had in their back pockets game changers that I am 100% going to steal. But working in the team dynamic is the big thing that was the takeaway. Both knowing my own roles and responsibilities and making sure that they were held accountable, showed up, but then also respecting other people's roles and responsibilities. Learning that team dynamic, I think that's where the diversity comes in, is the work styles. As I said earlier, Miriam brought to the table very creative, meticulous strategy in just implementing everything. And then what I found with Jen, working with Jen, is just the professionalism was awesome and just keeping us moving and motivated and on track. So that was my takeaway, is learning how to work in a team dynamic and how to work with others in that capacity.
Mm-hmm. And that's all for today. Thank you so much.
Questions, comments, concerns?
Thank you. That was an awesome first presentation to kick the whole thing off. You're the first one of the entire hackathon. So first hackathon presentation I've ever seen or judged, and I think probably the same for Elise and Carlos. Elise and Carlos, do you have any initial questions? We got just a couple minutes we can chat.
Yeah, I have a comment. I thought it was, first of all, excellent job. Tom said it correctly. This is our first time judging a hackathon presentation. Kudos for being the first ones. Amazing presentation. Love that your materials are very impressive. What I like the most, and this might be so silly, but I really loved your brand's color choice rationale. The fact that you tied it directly with the dogs, it's amazing. And Steve Buscemi, hello, that's adorable. But the one question, the one question I have, I love your individual takeaways, but what would you say is, as a team, how would you define success for this particular project?
You cut out for just a second, Carlos. You said, how would we define what?
Success for your project as a team.
I mean, obviously, we'd probably start implementing it in a small location area. There's several cities that we've looked at that ranked higher on dog friendliness. I think we use Portland, we looked at Denver, Tennessee. I think Nashville is actually a very highly populated dog area. So we probably use one of those areas for implementation. And then seeing how it grew from there would be the first step. And then we talk about it, just setting deadlines on to the growth from that in a timeline, and then making decisions based off that.
I think as a team, the other piece that we would do, like Miriam said, we actually took the time to reflect and not only spoke about things like, ooh, that didn't go as smooth as we thought, we could use work here, but we also discussed what went really well. And so part of the next steps would be establishing KPIs, remembering that our client is this entrepreneur. So we'd want to track, establish and track KPIs to determine success. And like I said, I absolutely love user research because that is really going to be the drive for what we tailor, how, and what we roll out when.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing, thank you.
Yeah, I'll just chime in here again. It's hard to go first when you have sort of nothing else to go off of. So I commend all of you for just being the first ones. I think you all did a fantastic job. It's clear that you really worked well together and collaboration was really strong and that you had a really strong team dynamic, which just makes for overall better result. I know Miriam and I chatted a lot last week and I know she was always like, I got to go to my team presentation. So, and you saw that in the end result on how fluid everything was and how everything was connected and made a lot of sense. So well done there. I think you all did a fantastic job. I did have just one question, and I'm just curious, mostly about the user research. And I guess I was wondering, could you speak to, if at all you had to kind of narrow down the scope a little bit? I'm looking at slides like 5, 6, and 7. So, so for example, slide 5 mentions that 50% are going to be in the suburban area, mostly skewing female identifying. And so I'm wondering, and then your 2 user personas, I don't remember the first person, the Willow, and then the next person after that. So did you focus on one user versus the other? Did you try to incorporate them equally? Did you kind of pare down to kind of get to your MVP? I guess I was just wondering if you could just talk a little bit about that process a little bit more.
Sure. So there wasn't too much paring down, as the needs and the pain points were really what we used to drive the development of the app. Like, we have a ton of screens, but we wanted to kind of dial the focus in for the MVP. And the goal of the MVP is directly tied to the pain points. So Willow's pain points, and this was reflected a lot in the user interviews where I interviewed females. Safety was a concern from the female's perspective. So some of what you didn't see in the screen was our default being for the profile to be private and give the user the power to make it public and shareable for some of that comfort. So that's part of what drove that thought process. The ability to set up a compatible play date, that was something that overlapped in both user personas. And then David's persona just captured some of the, I'm new to this area, kind of where do I go? Because the thing that the user survey told us as well, like I mentioned before, some people are just going out to walk their dog and coming back. But what we also had was a lot more people wanting to engage. Oh, I like to swing by my local brewery. If David can know about these places, then he'll start learning about his community and he's bringing his best bud along right with him. Does that answer your question, Elise?
It does. Yeah. Thank you. Just curious. Yeah. How that, you find a lot of overlap. Did one stand out more than the other? That was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks.
I feel like we could ask a lot more questions, and the judges will watch this asynchronously, our other judges that aren't here. And obviously, like, continue with, if you're interested in continuing to pursue this, please do so. I think it's a really great presentation, and hopefully you can all add it to your portfolio websites and brag about it, put it on your social media, put it on your LinkedIn, etc. And we encourage you to attend some of the other presentations today if you're available. So thanks for kicking the whole thing off, and we will see you on Slack and future calls.
Great job, everyone.
Thank you so much again.
Job.
Bye, folks.
Thank you so much.
Bye.